Want to watch football without the restrictions of blackouts or cable? Check out expressvpn.com to help you get access to all the live games. Sign up today using the link in the description to get 3 free months. Go to Bolt fam, it's the director. Chargers fans, you guys remember last season when seemingly the Chargers went nuts in free agency, and in that offseason we traded for Khalil Mack. We signed J.C. Jackson, Sebastian Joseph Day, Austin Johnson. It was a pretty wild offseason, one of the craziest that I've ever seen as a Chargers fan. Thus, we all kind of labeled it as the all-in season, sharing the similar name as the Chargers YouTube series. Well, I got to tell you guys, I think that the all-in narrative has carried over to this season in probably a more dramatic way. So much so that I'm going to be dubbing the 2023 season the all-or-nothing season due to what could be coming in the future past 2023. Let me also say this. 2023 has been set up to be a magical season. The Chargers have insane resources all over the roster, but I gotta tell you guys, next season, it is going to leave some wounds to the tune of $60 million over the cap, which means that this might be the final shot for the Chargers to go out there with their currently assembled roster and try to make the deepest push into the playoffs as possible. So that's what today's video is going to revolve around. All or nothing, why the 2023 season is just so important for the Chargers. We're going to break down all the different aspects of the roster that are working for us this season that are quite honestly kind of a powerhouse in certain positions for this season, and why we have to take advantage of it while we have it because of the situation coming up next season. So it should be a pretty interesting one, at least very educational for the Chargers fandom. Before we do get started, guys, shout out to the sponsor, Underdog Fantasy. The season's coming up. They're also doing this thing called Rivals, where you can go out there and say, hey man, Justin Herbert's gonna have a better season than a Joe Burrow. If you guys want to throw down for that, use code DIRECTORMATCH. Your first deposit up to $100. Get in on the action. It's a great way to support the channel, have some fun along the way. Now, before we do get started, guys, hit us up with a like and sub if you do enjoy this Chargers content. Small amount of time you guys take to hit the like, sub, and bell notification helps me out a lot. Let's get into it. Lights, camera, action. All or nothing, why the 2023 season is so vitally important for the Chargers this year. Again, we're going to break down every position, not every position, but every situation on the Chargers roster that's working for them this season that may end up shaking things up next season, especially due to money and financial restrictions. So let's go ahead and jump right into this. Brandon Staley certainly has his work cut out for him. Could be his last season with this assembled roster to really do something crazy. I'm sure it's a roster that any coach in the NFL would be extremely excited to work with. Let's hope Brandon Staley is up to the challenge. So let's actually kick things off with our first topic. Of course, it's one that Chargers fans have been monitoring for a long time. Me, myself, and I have been looking towards this state for a long time in terms of what can we build up until that point. And of course, we're talking about Justin's last bargain season. And what I mean by bargain season is, of course, Justin Herbert, drafted in 2020, was entering the league with a pretty friendly cap hit for the Chargers for the upcoming 4 or 5 seasons, right? Of course, the Chargers just picked up his 5th-year option. Thus, the Chargers will be paying him $30 million in 2024. But as for 2023, he should be still pretty cheap, opening up options for what the Chargers can do this season. The years to follow, however, after, let's say, his 5th-year option, where he's going to be making $30 million, he's going to be making upwards of $50 million a season. The time has come to pay the piper. The Justin Herbert bargain bin seasons are absolutely over, and this is going to be opening up, obviously, the first situation for the Chargers, probably the biggest situation for the Chargers financially going forward. Now, of course, it's kind of a good problem to have. This means that you've got one of the very best quarterbacks in the entirety of the NFL. It's something that every team in the league would kill for, and just so happens Justin Herbert is very, very worth the money, but it is going to restrict what you can do in the future, dramatically limiting what the Chargers can do financially. And it's something that is just around the corner. Again, next season, Herbert's going to be hitting for $30 million. Years after that, he's likely going to be hitting for around $50 million a season. And that is why the current roster of Chargers players are going to be impossible to maintain through the future. It's mainly due to the money allotted to the quarterback position, which in all fairness, Justin Herbert absolutely is worth every single penny. So it's up to the Chargers to figure out the details in and around that to keep the team functioning at a high level. All right, so Justin Herbert, the biggest thing I would say on this list, it's his last bargain season. The Chargers are going to have to compensate for that, okay? Next up on this list, we got to talk a little bit about this situation. It's something that we've actually talked about a lot this offseason because it was one of the bigger narratives that we had to cover in 2023. We're going to call this segment the end of an Eckler era, okay? And of course, if you guys have been following the channel, if you've been following the Chargers, the situation this last season, of course, was Austin Eckler maybe requesting a trade to go out there and try and make more money with a different team, which in all fairness, the man scored like 40 touchdowns in the last couple of seasons. I would say if it weren't for his position, he'd be absolutely entitled to that money. But unfortunately for Austin Eckler, the Chargers and the league don't really value the running back position the way they used to. It feels like no running back in the NFL is going to get the kind of money Austin Eckler was chasing. Now, fortunately, this season, the Chargers and Eckler did come to an agreement in which the Chargers would be offering him a bonus in terms of incentives, and thus Austin Eckler will be playing likely his last season with the Chargers. What I mean by that is I feel like Eckler, his situation should suggest that he's going to be chasing a paycheck next season, right? And we have to remember, guys, of course, I know a lot of Chargers fans, maybe even NFL fans, think you can just kind of, dink and dunk, or I should say swap out any running back and have similar results depending on the system. Partially true, but we have to remember what Eckler's contributions have been over the years. Guys, Austin Eckler has scored 63 touchdowns for the Chargers so far. We can't even add up what he's going to, score this season. I would expect at least 13, right? Putting him at around 77. That's the fourth most in Chargers franchise history. I think just following a Lance Allworth, one of the all-time greats. That's pretty significant. And the Chargers are going to likely have to supplement that next season. Now, of course, again, this is kind of a double-edged sword kind of video. We have to, get prepared for life after Eckler, but that doesn't mean that we don't have him this season. We need to use him to our full advantage this year, and I do expect Austin Eckler to have a pretty great season this year with the Chargers, similarly to his previous seasons. But I also have to point out that it feels like with Kellen Moore coming into the system, the Chargers trying to find a new identity on offense, I would expect a little less dinking and dunking to the running back and a little bit more traditional running in order to open up opportunities for the wide receivers, which are pretty stacked at this point. We're going to get to that in just a second. But with the Chargers moving on from the running back position, or I should say Austin Eckler next season, it is going to shake up the running back position quite a bit going into the future, right? Especially as how the Chargers are going to have to mold and shape this offense to the requests of a Kellen Moore, who does know what he's doing. He's going to leave behind a very nice offense for the Chargers, but it's going to require some change. Again, I think the Chargers are going to move off of, maybe running back passes and underneath kind of stuff so often and move to something a little bit more traditional. The running backs run, the wide receivers receive. And I do feel like that's kind of the direction that we're going. Now, in order for the Chargers to, again, fit their situation of financial distress with the Justin Herbert contracts coming up, et cetera, they're going to have to find some financial value, I would assume, in the NFL draft. Now, of course, you do have guys like, I would say, Isaiah Spiller and Xander Horvath that will remain on the team for sure going forward. I think those guys will definitely have a role, but I think the Chargers are going to have something more RB1 in mind. Guys like Trayvon Henderson, Blake Corum, these are the guys to monitor for the Chargers if you're a Chargers fan going into the 2024 NFL draft. And of course, you can find guys in the second and third round that can absolutely be RB1s. Also keep in mind at the running back position, Joshua Kelly and Larry Roundtree, the Chargers' current RB2 and then depth running back. These guys are both free agents entering next season as well. So the plot thickens when it comes to what the Chargers are going to do at running back. Again, if I had to guess what the Bolts' plan is, of course, you brought in Kellen Moore for a reason, a very underrated, stable running attack for the past several seasons in the Dallas Cowboys. I would honestly assume that the Chargers are going to start gently transitioning over to a more traditional style of play. You will see a good amount of Austin Eckler this season, but maybe we sprinkle in a little bit more Joshua Kelly and a little bit more Isaiah Spiller to ready the Chargers for that new style of offense that could really take a firm grip in 2024. So the end of an Eckler era, let's use him while we have him. The Chargers have a great arsenal of weapons, starting with the running back position at Austin Eckler. All right. Next up, now you guys remember how I talked about moving to something more traditional, running backs run, receivers receive. Well, this season, the Chargers have quite the impressive arsenal of wide receivers to call upon in a ridiculous, I would say almost, not trio, quadruple superstars at wide receiver. This year's unit of wide receivers is absolutely absurd. We got Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, Quentin Johnston, Josh Palmer, Jalen Guyton, and Darius Davis. It's stupid. The amount of talent oozing out of the wide receiver position is absolutely insane. And I got to tell you guys, again, double-edged sword, the positive side of that is that this unit should be one of the top performing wide receiver groups in all of football this season. And I am not exaggerating when I say that. The Chargers have given Justin Herbert weapons for pretty much every situation that any football game could throw at him at any given time, right? You got the third down slayer in Keenan Allen, thus the nickname Slayer. This guy's going to get you out of a pickle. He's going to, help you move downfield. Keenan is Keenan Allen. We know the man. We get the jump ball freak in Mike Williams, a very unique weapon in the NFL that not a lot of teams are equipped to counter. And now you add on top of that the deep threat yak demon in Quentin Johnston. This unit is absolutely ridiculous, not to mention the insane depth that we now boast at the wide receiver position. We got Josh freaking Palmer at wide receiver 4, who's probably going to get sprinkled in this season. I see a much bigger role for him going forward. You got Darius Davis, you're a trick play specialist, right? You're special teams kind of guy. And then you got also like a Jalen Guyton, if he makes the cut, as another deep threat option. The Chargers really looking good at wide receiver. It's going to be a tough team to contain in 2023. This team's going to be fun to watch, guys. Justin Herbert, he's going to have a heck of a season. I would at least predict another 5,000-yard season for Justin Herbert if everybody can stay healthy. Absolutely insane ceiling. But this will likely only last for one season, guys. Keenan and Mike, their situation's pretty sticky going into the future. And what I mean by that is that they combine for a whopping $67 million in 2024 against the cap. That is unheard of at the wide receiver position. Maybe it is a little bit heard of. We've seen other players, let's say like a DeAndre Hopkins, put his team in that kind of situation, and that kind of led to a separation. I don't know how much of it had to do with the money on the Cardinals side, but you have to, or not the Cardinals, but you guys understand how much money led. It's the Cardinals, director. You're going crazy. Either way, it's a situation that teams don't like to be in. They don't like paying a skill position like that much money, let alone two like the Chargers are. And because of that, a $67 million cap hit in 2024 at the wide receiver position for two players, I think the Chargers are going to be forced to make a very tough decision. They're going to have to cut one, if not both of these cats, to make room for the future. And that is something Chargers fans don't like talking about. I certainly don't like talking about it. I bring it up because I'm trying to keep Chargers fans informed, get you guys ready, right? Put your head on the seat and, clamp your head down or whatever the safety precautions may be. Brace yourselves for what could be coming in 2024 at the wide receiver position. The Chargers are going to have to make some moves. Now, by cutting either one of these guys, they're going to be saving $20 million a pop, right? And they're going to need that money for Justin Herbert, let alone other needs on the roster. If they cut both of them, they would be saving a crazy $40 million, which again is something that could maybe be on the table. Now, what I think is going to happen, again, because the situation's kind of unique, most of the time you're going to say, well, the younger guy, Mike Williams, if they're going to keep either one of them, I think it would be him. In this situation, I think it would be actually Keenan Allen that would remain with this squad. And it's for a very specific reason. I think Mike Williams, being 30 years old, yes, a little bit older in the NFL, I still think he'd be able to find a decent contract somewhere else. Keenan Allen, I should say, though, he may have a bit more difficult of a time finding a squad at age, what it would be 33, 34 at the time. I personally believe that Keenan Allen can play until he's like 35, very similar to a Larry Fitzgerald, but I think it's going to be very situational in terms of what teams he's going to fit on. I think the Chargers ultimately will be the best squad, and I think Keenan Allen's going to understand that. So for me, what I think the Chargers could end up doing is cutting Mike Williams, which again, I hate saying so, especially as we're about to go into a season where I think he's going to rock, but we're talking about the future here. They might cut Mike Williams, saving $20 million, and then extending Keenan Allen, trying to spread that money, what is it, $34 million next season, trying to spread that over the course of the next couple of years, right? I would say 2 or 3 seasons tops. That would absolutely make more sense, where the Chargers are paying closer to $15 million a season rather than $34 million for just this next season alone. I think that's something that's absolutely possible. And again, it only works because I think Keenan Allen, in his twilight years, would be wise to take another deal from his native team in order to keep his NFL career going as long as possible, okay? And before anybody says, hey, director, we should just trade these guys. If we can't keep them all on the roster, we should try and get back whatever we can in terms of draft capital. I suppose you could maybe swing something, right? It's not going to be what you guys want, but you could do something. The only problem is that kind of cap hit is so huge. I think any team in the NFL is going to have a hard time justifying that. Thus, why we're seeing a situation like DeAndre Hopkins right now, who still hasn't found a team, one of the best wide receivers in football. He's attached to some money. And it's not even, attached money from the Cardinals. It's just him, what he wants to be paid. That's kind of where we're at with veteran wide receivers, okay? Now, what does that do for the future? Well, this season, we already know it's going to be ridiculous. It's going to be very fun to watch. The wide receiver room for the Chargers next season and going forward, it could look something like this next year. Keenan Allen, right, still playing your slot kind of guy. Quentin Johnson, maybe playing your X receiver. And then Josh Palmer on the opposite side. Maybe sprinkling in a Darius Davis, right? That looks like a pretty healthy room still. And it sucks not to think of, Mike Williams on there, but it's something that we have to prepare ourselves for. And an even more insane world, the room could look even something like this. Quentin Johnson, Josh Palmer, Darius Davis with Palmer in the slot. That's crazy to think about. But again, money is money. Sometimes football is business, and we have to be prepared for the reality of that. Now, this could put the Chargers in a situation where they might be looking for a cheaper wide receiver 3 next season. And the good news is, at least from my research, there are some speed demons to be found in free agency next season. You got Mecole Hardman, Marquise Hollywood Brown, Calvin Ridley, to name a few. But I would expect the Chargers to favor the draft route once again, because, again, the Chargers are going to be in such a tight financial situation. You're going to want to bring in talent as cheap as freaking possible. And again, maybe the Chargers can swing a draft pick or 2 for some of these guys that they would have to otherwise cut, giving them some options in the draft, but still, it's something you have to think about. And one thing is for certain, though. This is the almost guaranteed to be the unit's last ride together. So we need to make it count. As Chargers fans, soak up every single week that we've got Keenan and Mike on the field together. Knock on wood, that happens more often than not. And just have some fun with it, because this could be our last opportunity for a long time. All right? Now, the next segment. This one probably a little bit shorter. The top of Mount Everett. All right, fun name. All right, the tight end position, I think, should see a significant shakeup as well next season. Nothing too crazy, because you got to save money somewhere, right? And I think tight end is something that the Chargers are trying to, again, maybe get a little bit more involved, but by also featuring the wide receivers a little bit more. It feels like, again, the Chargers are trying to go a little bit more traditional. You could see the Chargers try and push that tight end narrative a little bit more, though, because of Kellen Moore and his exposure to guys like Dalton Schultz in the past. Either way, I think tight end's going to see a little bit of movement. As you know, Gerald Everett is on a contract year, at least I hope you know. He's entering also, I think, his age 29 season, right? So he's getting a little bit up there in age. Now, I feel like, again, there's a good chance that maybe the Chargers try and find a different option in 2024, right? This season, the Chargers, I think they got themselves a very nice floor tight end. I call him a floor tight end because he goes out there, blue chip kind of guy, really does his job, right? Nothing spectacular, but you can count on him in a lot of situations. Sure, he's not going to be perfect. There were some problems last season, but he's better than a lot of other tight end options you're going to find in the league. Blue chip kind of guy. Still, that being the case, I think the Chargers are going to try and find something a little bit similar, just like we did last year, or I should say 2 years ago with Jared Cook. We went and found something similar in Gerald Everett, just much younger. I think it would be favor again of someone cheaper and younger, but does maybe around the same thing. Now, of course, the first best option is going to be the draft, and this is going to be one of those options in terms of positions next year that I'm going to be pounding the table for, right? We got some talent in the top rounds at tight end once again. You guys remember that year that Kyle Pitts came into the league, especially this last season, right? We had Dalton Kincaid and Michael Mayer. We were kind of hoping to get a tight end at some point this last draft. I think next draft is also a very good opportunity. Maybe it's not as deep as last year's draft, but the top tier talent could be some of the best we've ever seen. Some people are saying Brock Bowers out of Georgia. This guy could be the best tight end prospect we've ever seen. And yes, that is above even a Kyle Pitts, which is absolutely ridiculous. Chargers could be in play there. Who knows? Who knows? But you're going to find your best value, a lot of us would agree, at tight end in the draft. And I think that's something that the Chargers are going to chase next season. Try and find something that's cheaper. Even if it's a first-round guy, he'll be a good investment going forward. But you could also find another guy, I would say a very solid option in the first 3 rounds. And I think that's going to be something the Chargers do expect. I do expect the Chargers to exercise. Try and find a nice cheap option there. Then there's free agency as well. And this is actually one of the few positions where I think the Chargers would absolutely be wise to maybe spend a little bit of money in, because it's just that, a little bit of money. You're not going to spend a crazy amount on tight end. Dalton Schultz, who just signed a 1-year, $6 million deal with the Texans, he'll be available next season. And of course, I mean, things could turn around, but it's the Texans. I don't know if he's going to put up crazy numbers with the rookie quarterback in that season. So he might have the Chargers might have an opportunity to sign him cheap next year, reuniting him with Kellen Moore. Then you got guys like Mike Gesicki, Noah Fant, Harrison Bryant. These are all young, cheap options who I think could provide an Everett-type ceiling, maybe even better. All right. So tight end, another position that last ride with, Gerald Everett, maybe not the craziest player on the roster, but it's something that I think maybe we take it for granted a little bit. He's been very, very solid. All right. Next up, this one hurts me, y'all. This one hurts me greatly, but it's something that we have to talk about. Okay. This segment's called The Last Attack of Bosa and Mack. This year could likely see the last time, and maybe hopefully first time, right, that we see this duo play together. Last season was a disaster. Of course, you guys remember Joey Bosa going down, all that hype with him playing with Khalil Mack. We just didn't get to see it. We didn't get to see it. This season, however, if these guys can stay healthy, please, for the love of God, again, I'm knocking on wood like crazy this video. I cannot tell you how big of an impact that this is going to make for the team. You guys remember why we were so hyped last season when we traded for Khalil Mack? Remember the potential that we talked about in Khalil and Joey Bosa, on each side, getting after the quarterback. I'll tell you who remembers. You know who remembers? Derek Carr remembers. You guys remember that week 1 matchup? Derek Carr was running for his life. And that is a great preview of what we could have seen for the entirety of the season if these guys were both healthy. That's a big deal. Before Bosa went down with injury, this pair was on pace for like 46 sacks in 2022 combined. 46. Is that a bit exaggerated? Maybe, but by how much is what I'm going to ask you guys. By how much is that exaggerated? I don't know if it's by too much. Maybe we're talking in the high 30s. That's still pretty impressive. That's something that I do expect to see this season. So knock on wood again that we finally get to see that pair go ham together, because this could be our last opportunity to see that happen. And the reason I say that is because next season, Khalil Mack has a massive cap hit of $38 million. That's a lot of money to pay a 33 going on 34-year-old linebacker. I should say edge. It's a lot of money. Chargers could save $23 million by cutting him. And again, they're going to be putting themselves in a situation where they're going to have to make decisions like that. Not to mention Joey Bosa on the opposite side. He's got a massive cap hit as well of $36 million in 2023. Combined, we're talking what, $70 million bucks? It's so much money. And the Chargers are going to have to make sacrifices somewhere. So again, if I were to predict what could possibly happen, again, because of financial restraint, I would expect the Chargers to move on from Khalil Mack, freeing up that money and letting the Chargers' second-round pick from this last season shine a little bit next season, and Tuli Tuipulotu. Luckily, we did draft that man, and I think the future of that position looks bright because of that decision this year. But next season, it's going to be a tough pill to swallow, right? And I hope that especially if we get to see a nice, sample size of this duo together this season, it's going to be tough. But another big thing to remember while we also mentioned Tuli is that the fact that the Chargers this season, in this magical 2023 season where all these pieces will remain on the roster, is that we do have Tuli, a third option at edge that's going to be rotating in with these two beasts, these two demons. That's something that the Chargers probably won't have next season. Maybe we have a decent, backup, option at edge 3 next season to rotate in with Tuli and Bosa. But it's not going to be anything like it is this season. Joey Bosa is one of the best edge players in the league. So is Khalil Mack. Even at these age groups of 30, 33, whatever, they're massively impressive. This duo is going to be better than almost any other duo in the NFL. I would say at least top 4, right? Absolutely insane. You also have a Thule that can rotate in with them. That's going to keep this pass rush very consistent, very fresh. It's something that you're only going to see in 2023. Because next season, I think we're going to have to make some cutbacks. All right, so put your feet up. Get excited to watch Bosa and Mac for the first, hopefully not the last, but maybe the last time this season. I hope they stay healthy because it's going to be something to witness. You guys maybe question the legitimacy of, these two players because of their age or whatever. Just remember the first couple of weeks of last season when they were playing together. It was effective. It was working. And the Chargers have them, again, for one more season this year for us to enjoy. All right. Lastly, we do have this last segment called Big Needs Little Money. And this is something kind of lightly touching on what I did. I think my last video, maybe it was the video before, on talking about how many free agents that we got exiting the team next season. And next season, it's going to open up a lot of needs because of that, right? A lot of free agents departing. To name a few that we talked about in that video, here's some of the bigger ones. Michael Davis, who you see photographed here. Austin Johnson, Gerald Everett, Kenneth Murray, Austin Eckler, Jalen Guyton, Josh Kelly, Alohi Gilman, Cameron Dicker. There's going to be a lot of needs all of a sudden that need to be filled. And if I'm being honest, not a lot of money. Not a lot of money. Some of the positions I think are going to need some attention financially. Cornerback, safety, running back especially, tight end. The Chargers are going to have their work cut out for them. Now, with Herbert finally reaching his payday seasons, we'll be kind of at the mercy of a Coupon Tom. You guys remember the Coupon Tom days in the Phillip Rivers era, the end there, right, where Coupon Tom was coming in there, and he was making some pretty good moves, right? I think that's why we started calling him Coupon Tom. He goes out there, gets some guy on the cheap, and Phillip Rivers and them have some crazy chemistry all of a sudden, and boom, bang, boom, Chargers offense is back, in rhythm. We're going to have to kind of lean on that again, assuming that Tom Telesco remains the GM for the Chargers going forward. Either way, to close out this video, two things I wanted to show you guys. Okay, one, I kind of wanted to explain why I decided to wake up and make this video in the first place. And again, like I said at the top, it's because of this number right here. The Chargers, $60.5 million over the cap next season. I remember making fun of the Saints last year because they were like $30 or $40 million over the cap, something like that. We are in trouble. we're double that at this point. And I kind of wanted to show you guys how dramatic of a sacrifice you're going to have to make in order to get cap compliant with this kind of situation. And again, it's not to freak anybody out. It's definitely an exercise to help prepare ourselves for the future, but this is the kind of thing that we're talking about, okay? This is why you need to cut maybe a Khalil Mack, okay, in 2024. That lowers it down to $37 million, okay? This is why you maybe need to cut a Mike Williams, which lowers it down to 17. This is why you maybe have to, let's say, renegotiate or extend a Keenan Allen, right? Oh my goodness, we're gonna have to do this on the fly, huh? Okay, so first off, let's go ahead and say $5 million a season, right? Just to kind of spread that money out a little bit. Not 54, Director. $5 million, okay? This prorated bonus cannot be touched, so that puts this season, let's go ahead and take this non-prorated bonus out, at $16 million for 2024. That seems pretty reasonable, and then the Chargers can add another bonus here of, let's say, like $10 million. Kind of spreading that money out is what the objective is. So let's go ahead and put that in the books here. This brings the Chargers to cap compliant all of a sudden, but just barely, okay? $700,000 in the green. That doesn't count what the Chargers still have to adjust for in 2024, right? They're going to need corners. They're going to need running backs. They're going to need safeties, maybe even a tight end. This is not something you can get all together in just the draft. You're going to have to spend some money out there. So that could be just the beginning of some of the sacrifices. Sure, I could see the Chargers having to make some moves in terms of like restructures and stuff like that. I don't think it would be, maybe it could be a JC Jackson, who knows? But my point is, there's going to be some movement financially next season. And this is why we are covering this topic right now. This is why we're talking money right now. This is why we're talking future right now. Because on one hand, you've got an awesome season that could be put together in 2023 with the amount of talent you've got all over this roster. But then on the other hand, it's going to leave some scars going forward. So my bottom line in this video, okay, to close this thing out, I don't say all this stuff to freak you guys out, okay? We have an awesome 2023 season ahead of us. Okay, I say this and I make this video to paint a picture because yes, next season is going to get messy. It's going to get messy, but that just speaks to how truly stacked and talented this roster is today. Remember when we said make the most of Herbert's cheap rookie seasons? Well, this is kind of what it looks like. Okay, the roster's stacked from top to bottom. And what this video is trying to accomplish first and foremost is how lucky and ridiculously lucky that we are to have such a ludicrous roster loaded with talent right now in 2023. But it also reflects on how important it is to take this team as far as they can possibly go while we have them this season. because this is likely the last time we're going to see this unit together. At minimum, I think we're going to lose at least 3 star players next season, which is a pretty big deal. So we need to go crazy. Let's do it. Hopefully the coaching is up for it. This coaching needs to deliver. Telesco needs to deliver. Staley needs to deliver. Coordinators need to deliver. Because this is probably the last time we'll have this unit together. The last hoorah of the Los Angeles Chargers in 2023 as they presently look. So you guys in the comment section below, let me know what your thoughts are. Let me know if there's some things that you would rather do in terms to try and keep some of this talent on the roster. It could get kind of crazy next year, but you let me know some of your thoughts. Guys, thank you so much for joining me. This has been The Director. If you like what you saw here, hit us up with a like and sub on your way out. We'll see you next time, and as always, bolt up and stay frosty. Just look forward to the wide receivers this year, guys. It's going to be insane. And also look forward to the Bosa and Khalil Mack attack duo finally together in 2023. It's going to be a fun season to watch while we have these players.